It is my immense pleasure and my honor to welcome all of you here, all the dignitaries who have come far away, especially to make this event a very successful.
And our next incredible speaker is, I'd like to personally invite Mr. Dr. Biju Toms, Director, School of Commerce, Finance, and Accountancy, Christ, deemed to be university he has over 35 years of experience, an education evangelist, business transformation leader, technology implementation and thought leadership, having worked with NTPC, Ministry of Power, Government of India. Dr. Biju Toms will be sharing his research on reimagining excellence in universities through human capital development, inclusive governance, and meaningful social outreach. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you for the opportunity given to me to address this august audience. My topic for today's discussion is based on a paper that I have submitted. It is reimagining excellence in universities through human capital development, then inclusive growth and governance, and more importantly, how we impact social outreach and how whether we have a measurable impact aspects that we are looking at. Now, post COVID has made the life of universities quite challenging. What I find, or what in our study we've been able to understand, that there's this beautiful saying which goes with this thinking, that if you initiate change, you become the leader of the change. If you change with change, you are successful, and if you change after change, you survive the change. But today, many of the universities are not even understanding the kind of changes that is happening outside the ecosystem and making adequate changes within. So, in this regard, one of the most important observation made by former Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, he says the role of the educational institutions and universities is in the creation of social intellectual capital. If that has to happen, then the two other important parameters have to be met. How do you enhance the HR, human resource capital? And the second is, how do you foster inclusive growth? And more importantly, you step out of your campus, step out of your comfort zone of the university. How do you make a meaningful social outreach? Now, in this regard, there are three critical areas that we are looking at. I mentioned about these three factors about HR. In HR, basically, what we find today in universities is many of the universities find it extremely difficult to attract the talent. Why? In terms of the salary and the monetary package, that incentives that you give are not attractive. Therefore, it is one of the major challenge that you come across. Second aspect in HR itself is, what are the kind of policies, HR practices that are prevalent in the organization in the universities. And more importantly, the strategies. How are you looking ahead? Many a times it is said the educational administrators and leaders pedal like it's like pedaling a cycle, looking at their feet. They're not looking ahead. So these are the kind of important challenges that you have in HR. And some of the critical areas in HR is, are you able to attract the talent? One. Secondly, if at all you attract the talent, how do you retain them? Third is, if at all you are able to retain them, do you have a clear cut strategy for developing them? If these aspects are not met, HR retention is going to be one of the biggest challenge. Now you go to the next aspect in terms of the system or the structure in the organization. Do you have an inclusive growth? How are you at reaching out to women? How are you reaching out to the minorities? Do they have a critical role in the organization? So, three R's are very, very important. The number one, the first R is the regard that each of the employee has towards the organization, towards each other. Second is the respect part of it. And third only comes the reward part of it. So, these three R's really critically define an HR ecosystem in an organization. Now, in terms of the social, in terms of the second critical component, the third critical component is the social outreach. Now, in this aspect, we very, very clearly studied one of the reach out that we, as a university, we did, and that was we identified a very, very remote rural area in the country, and then we decided how do we have our students have a immersion there. In fact, yesterday, one of the faculty member from Abraham Fischler College at Florida was making a similar kind of an observation about how they had involved the student community. So when you're talking about HR, you can also look at the student availability, the student community, and how you can reach out to them. Now, in this particular experiment that we did, we were able to reach out to this particular, and we were really, really surprised that there were absolutely no data available there. And then we did a social scientific survey, and in that survey, we were able to identify that 11,960 people did not have any form of insurance there out of 21,083 people. Huge chunk of data was cleared when we got, and then we made a huge study on that. In the process, we were able to, with that critical intervention by the university, we were able to understand that it can have a very, very positive impact on the society. Today, we are thinking about how can we reach out to 6 lakh villages in the country. The government and the government missionary have taken this into consideration, and they are now supporting us. Now, plenty of literature that we covered, and most of the literature that we looked at were concentrated or confined only to the two areas. That is the how HR is going to make an impact. Second is about the social outreach, and we also wanted to have a clear critical role on the transparency side of it. So these are the kind of aspects that we looked into. Now, if you look at the universities across the globe, you find that the University of Oxford is leading way ahead in terms of the Times Higher Education ranking. And even some of the best universities in the US, like Stanford and others, have not been able to reach out. And here we find that some of the most critical aspects, which has defined Oxford University to be on the fore, is mainly because of the three aspects that I have highlighted. Yes, this is the standard template which we've been working on and studying. Yes, as I mentioned earlier, that the respect and the trust factor supersedes everything in terms of in creating and fostering a transparent HR environment in the organization. And another thing, and one more area which on the collaboration. Now, when you talk about collaboration, it is not about the superior subordinate kind of a collaboration that it exists, but in terms of reaching out to the student community as well. In an organization, in the university that I represent, we have nearly 40,000 students. And to these students to get into the campus, we generally get an application numbers to somewhere around 250,000 applications come, and out of that only 9,000, 10,000 people are getting in. So we find that this kind of students that we get are extremely brilliant. Today, we are also, in another aspect of societal reach out, we are trying to create and engender a particular program called financial literacy program. Financial literacy program is one of the most important life skill that you have to have. And in the process, we've been able to develop 10,000 trainers. And these 10,000 trainers come from the student community. So these are some of the aspects that I want to have been discussing, but I want to critically, how do you have a broad representation in terms of governance? Many a times we find that the governance structure itself is a little opaque. So how do we have a transparency there? Second is the foster of a culture of communication, and more importantly, the collaboration side. And the third aspect is the data driven decision making. Even yesterday, most of the presentations you find that it is more oriented towards AI, isn't it? So, how AI is going to have a critical role in having governance. Now, one important area I want to highlight here is evaluation is becoming one of the big challenge today in terms when you have huge numbers and when you have members from different parts of the world. How do you make the key critical, or how do you have a composite evaluation? So we are now looking at another important aspect of the university is how do we have the kind of digitized evaluation. So we are looking at two critical scores. What is their comprehensive score that is based on some 60 parameters, and their departmental score in terms of their how do they see, for example, some of the key critics, are they able to work together as team working is one of the key critical skills. So several areas, so those parameters, can we have the evaluation done using AI? So that will give a more comprehensive picture about the individual, and this will be key critical when they join an organization in terms of industry needs or even for the societal outreach. Yeah, conclusions and perspective, and thereafter I would like to have one or two questions from your side. One is most important thing we find of all the discussions that I have to make is how do we focus on inclusive governance. Only when you have an open, transparent system that people in the organization, we call that as organizational citizenship behavior. How do we, how do the HRs members in the organization own up the system, and how do they have a key critical component or impact on the society? And the next important thing which I would highlight is the digital transformation. How streamlined is the HR processes, and how effectively and efficiently can we execute the goals and requirements of the organization. So this in nutshell is what my presentation is. If any questions are there, I would definitely would like to take up.
So, in terms of inclusiveness, how do you have the surveys and everything, but how do you go back and reassess that as your faculty? And how do you do that? In other words, a lot of times we have all these surveys, but then there's nothing there to say, okay, we made these adjustments, and then we evaluate based on those adjustments.
So, when you conduct the survey, of course, we've conducted mostly the quantitative kind of approach that we've been able to do it. Once the survey is done and when it is given a statistical interpretation, we will know exactly where especially when we use the reliability tests and so on, we will be able to understand where exactly are the gaps. So gaps are identified. For instance, in our organization, university itself, we have faculty members and students representing different states of the country, and each state has a different unique culture. So there is this quite a big challenge of how do you accommodate the interests, especially the minorities in that. So that gap has been plugged by later on with the meta evaluation by the experts, and then we are able to take it up, adopt the representation, recommendations. Yes.
Good morning. I just want to ask you, how would you implement strategies to help children that have a special educational needs? How would you go about helping them?
Yeah. So, in terms of the academic, since it's a university, we have two approaches. One is what is happening within, and second is how do you reach out to the community at large. Inside, what we do is we have the curriculum, and after the pedagogy or the teaching learning practice is over, there is the evaluation happening. So people with the differential learning needs are identified, and in those people who are having differential needs, we are giving them bridge programs and remedial programs. And when those two aspects are actually addressed, we have seen that the quality of the students have really been able to come up. In fact, we had a distinct program in which from the community we took students of almost 500 students who are children of single parents, broken families, and first time learners as well. But we were surprised to have, when we were looking at their learning trajectory and later on, subsequently after their graduation, where they've been doing excellently well. So it is the creation of the environment, suitable environment within the academic environment that and it fosters growth. So it all depends on the kind of confidence that they build up, and also in terms of their communication skills and connecting with the various stakeholders.
Thank you again, Dr. Biju. The next award goes to Dr. Biju Toms.